To introduce our first speaker, Mr. SRINATH. Mr. SRINATH is a techno-legal lawyer with 22 plus years of experience as at India and Solicitor UK. He specializes in protection and cybercrime related matters. Now I call upon Mr. SRINATH to take over the session.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you for introducing me to this vast audience. And I thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to be heard. And without wasting time, let me start off because we are working on a very shorter time frame, 3:30 to 5 p.m. So I'll just start off with this presentation. Is that okay with everyone? Right. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So essentially, the first thing that I would like to talk about is why do you need lawyer to speak about cybercrime? Or what is the need of a lawyer in this particular forum where you have technical expertise and everyone is sitting in this group are from the technical background? The whole reason why I am present here is I come in when things go wrong at the other end. So what could go wrong is what we are going to see and what is a remedy for it. So that's the reason why you have this Information Technology Act that has been framed in order to protect the offenses that are happening on the technology front. That's the sole purpose of bringing it. We have experts who are from cybersecurity. We have experts coming who are here from different areas, and the whole prospect of information security is to ensure that something does not go wrong. So that's the reason why we have so much of technical what we say of infrastructure that is being developed around this information technology area to protect the flow of information. So without delaying, I'll just start off. So essentially, where did this whole thing originate from? So the origination of your information technology started way back in 30th of January 1997, where the first step was taken by UN General Assembly to adopt the model law of electronic commerce. It is referred to as unilateral model of law on e-commerce. India passed its first act in the year 2000. That is, the first act was Information Technology Act 2000, with effect from 17th of October 2000. It was further amended in 2009. And then for this particular amendment was known as Information Technology Act Amendment. So we use a lot of word like cyberspace and all that. So you guys are well versed with what this thing is. So it's essentially just to give a platform before we actually start getting into the IT Act. So it's essentially an area where you have the computer, your internet, and you have the web. All these three put together becomes a cyberspace where you are virtually connected with the people through various platforms in various aspects. You're connected through the internet, you're connected to the desktop, through the phone, and there are other aspects to it where you are interconnected. Cyberspace from Wikipedia, or what would say, it's a consensual, hallucinational experience daily by billions of legitimate operators in every nation, by children being taught mathematical concept, a graphic representation of data abstracted from banks of every computer in the human system, unthinkable complexity, lines of light ranged in non-space of the mind clusters, and constellations of data like city lights receding, etc. This is what a cyberspace is. I'm sure we wouldn't have figured out what it means, but we know we are talking about a virtual world where we are currently operating from. And right now, under this COVID scenario, this has become a way of life. So how are we connected? Essentially, just an illustration, online services, Swiggy, Zomato, your internet banking, HDFC, Axis, HSBC, Citibank, Standard Chartered, all these things. What are you using? Some smartphone? Yes. The basic phones have already gone. It's nowhere in the scene available now. So we have now come into the virtual world of the internet, and this is we are connected to all these services directly or indirectly. How are we affected? Well, there are three areas how it gets affected. An individual gets affected, a society gets affected, and the nation also gets affected. Individual, how? There's an email spoofing, there's a forgery, phishing of email, credit card fraud, data theft, and denial of service. On the individual front, my personal experience as of now is I had my debit card transaction SMS coming out in the morning saying that 76 rupees has been debited from your account late night. It is at 12:30 a.m. in the morning. I was asleep. I was wondering how could my debit card be used, and I checked the internet, net banking, and I find that 76 rupees was debited and then credited by some Colombian sportswear shop somewhere in US. So something has gone wrong, and immediately I had to hotlist my card. That's this basic experience that one faces. At the society level, sale of illegal articles, narcotics, weapons, wildlife, online gambling, intellectual property crimes such as software piracy, copyright infringement, trademark violation, theft of source code, child pornography. So these are a different levels of seriousness of offenses that we are looking at. Uh, the other aspect is, even in the society related issues, you have a lot of false messages that are being propagated. Today, just before I was entering into this conference, into this webinar, one of my friend calls me up and says, Shri, I lost 2000 rupees. I said, why? I did a payment over the mobile phone. I said, why did you make a payment? He said, my kids wanted to buy a pet. I gave a money on advance and that guy is not returning. Simple. This is a level of how you could get conned now in this current world. At the level of somebody needs to cut off the mic here. At the national level, you have defacing of websites, cyber terrorism, hacking banking terminals, network related issues, information warfare, etc. I can also do denial of service and all these aspects. Let's deep dive into it. Why am I worried about the IT Act? My email service provider refused to give me an access to my email. My web designer decided to lock my web page. My developer and web consultant is refusing to transfer my domain name. I just received a mail claiming to know my password and had sent an email to extort. The latest one is a Cognizant being hit by Maze ransomware. Now, the ones that I have mentioned are the common things that you will face. Suddenly, you'll have a mail popping into your Gmail or personal mail. It will say that the first three letters of your mails are password. For last four digits of your password are put in. It says, I know the password of your particular account. I know what you are doing. So you better cough up this money, or I'm going to spread this information to all your contacts in the net from your email address. So this is a common thing that happens. The other kind of attacks that has happened recently, Cosmos Bank cybercrime attack, more than around close to 90 crores was lost. There was an ATM system hacked for a Canara Bank, which they ended up losing money in that. UIADI Aadhaar software was hacked. 1.1 million Aadhaar card holders detail was chiffoned off. So there are more. Hack attack on Indian website. This is one of the. This is a recent one that has happened. US based cybersecurity firms identified this. These are the common things that are happening, and what is your recourse for all this? Swim swap. This is the latest kind of an offense that is happening. I think technically you guys are much aware of more offenses that are happening out there. SIM swap is something which, according to my research, is like you need a service provider to be hand in glove with these characters or with these hackers. So your information goes out from the SIM card. They are able to track it into your email, and then they reset the password, and then they use it to take an access into your Bitcoin wallet and pull out money. The thing that I've mentioned to you is a case which happened for a friend of mine who was traveling from US, who was in India, and within 15 seconds he saw his Bitcoins vanishing from his wallet. And before that, he saw a series of SMSs coming through, which asked for a reset of his Yahoo Mail's password. there was an OTP which came in, that was accessed by this other person, the password was reset for Yahoo, Bitcoin's wallet was accessed through the Yahoo ID which was synced with the Bitcoin wallet, money went off. This is one. The other attacks. Kundakulam nuclear power plant was defaced. UN Security Council panel finds Cosmos Bank cyber motivated by North Korea. City Union loses 2 million. I was involved with City Union funds issue where they lost. There were two incidents which occurred there. There was an ATM Swift ATM switch attack, and there was also Swift terminal attack. Luckily, in both the cases, we have managed to bring out the money, or we are able to freeze this money. The only aspect is we have to get it back. Now, due to the lockdown, all these things have brought to standstill. These are all the examples of how you are connected. So I'm not going to waste much of time on this. And again, so statistically speaking, growth rate of cybersecurity expenditure in India between 2019 and 2022 by sector. Here is the whole aspect that is before you. 2019 information technology and service sector in India had the highest share of expenditure towards cybersecurity. It was estimated that the sector's cybersecurity expenses would grow at the rate of 18% between 2019 to 2022. All of those who are into information security business, it's a good news for you. The banking financial sector, the insurance sector, came second with 16.1% growth rate of cybersecurity expenses in the given period. Number of cyber crimes related data theft across has increased. 2016 was the lowest. Now we are looking at 106 cases of data. These are 106 cases are reported cases. There are so many unreported cases that we don't even know what's happening out there. So it is the whole aspect is that there is a need to enforce cybersecurity technically, and then you also need to be aware of what is the protection you can get from the law enforcement. Countries with the highest share of user attacks. So we start with Thailand, and India is way from 4.28% of attack. So we are down in the chain, but with the current rate of adaptation to the internet and the dependency on all these cyber related or the internet and the dependency on cloud based services, we are definitely going to see a lot of issues coming up. Here is a National Crime Record Bureau of different states, and I've specifically picked up to just give an idea of the number of cases that are happening across. So just to give you an idea of where we are. So this is something that relates. These are statistics figure from 2016 to 2018 of cyber crimes statewide. So we have Tamil Nadu in 2016 144 cases. In 2018 we have 295 cases. So you can see where it is going. Major cyber crimes reported in India: denial of service, defacement of website, spam. Somebody's mic is on. Can they just mute it? Thank you. Computer virus worms, pornography, cyber squatting, cyber stalking, cyber phishing. Common kind of the offenses that are seen. I am closely connected with the cybercrime department, and I interact with the officers, and I get a feel of different offenses that are happening. Most of them, if you see, are related to money, where the money is swindled out. The second related thing is blackmailing, defaming somebody, taking out photographs and trying to blackmail. These are the common kind of cyber crimes that I am seeing. Nearly 69% of the information theft is carried out by current and ex-employees, and 31% by hackers. India has gone a long way in protecting vital information. So the other information, nearly 120 million worth of mobiles are being lost or stolen in our country every year. This is where we are coming. This is the backdrop I set across so that you get an idea of where it is, what's happening. Of course, you are on the technical front and you are pushing your products and you're trying to explain the importance of the information security, technical aspect of securing your information and network. But this is the fundamental reality that's happening out there, which will actually help you to push this whole gamut of your security products or getting your clients to be aware of what's happening. So, like I said, individual, society, country, these are all the different offenses that are happening. I've already covered earlier. I don't want to again go into this. What is the objective of the Information Technology Act? The legal recognition to regulate the transaction in cyberspace. It's essentially to protect the electronic transaction. It also covers everything that connects with the e-commerce and that's connected with the digital landscaping, which means it includes e-payment. It also includes your electronic transfer of funds. It also includes your digital signature. The resultant effect of Information Technology Act has been that it has got amendment done in Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, the Bankers Book of Evidence, Reserve Bank of India. So they also had a cascading effect of having amendments being done so that it is in sync with the Information Technology Act. So here is the structure. This is the Information Technology Act. It's divided into 5 parts and it has subsequent headers. You have part 1, which talks about the e-records and e-signature. Part 2, which talks about the penalty and adjudication. Part 3, about the authorities who deal with the Information Technology Act and stuff. Part 4, offenses as they're defined and the penalty, and part 5 is the miscellaneous. It talks about the formation of the tribunal and stuff like that. Authentication, part 1 talks about, when we talk about e-records and e-signature, part 1 talks about authentication of e-records, preservation of e-records, attribution to e-records, acknowledgement of receiving e-records, legal recognition. So part 1 of the IT Act talks about all these aspects: time, place, dispatch, receipt of e-records, use of e-records, e-sign in government. So essentially it regulates everything which relates to digital signature, the e-records, and all these aspects. So anything, so the act first defines what it covers and it will tell what constitutes an offense, and then the third part will talk about what is the penalty. The fourth part will talk about how the procedure has to be taken care of. It also will talk about what all acts to be read with. So if there is an offense under IT Act, Information Technology Act, the Information Technology Act will define that offense on that particular platform, that is the electronic platform. So if you say simplest thing, data theft, if IT Act was not there and if you went to the police station and said, I lost my data, they're going to say, what is the data? Okay, if it's lost, how are we connected with it? Our IPC does not talk about any data theft. It talks about theft. But what is data? Can you show me? Data is intangible. How are you going to show it? But it's got a lot of value. How are you going to explain it? That's the reason why the Information Technology Act came in. The Information Technology Act defines all the offenses that are done on this particular platform or in this particular what we say, the area of cyberspace and the internet. Once defined, the offense is also defined, the penalty is also defined, penalizing aspect is also defined in IT Act, but it is then read with the IPC, the CRPC, the Evidence Act. So your prosecution takes place under CRPC. You would also be prosecuted under the relevant provisions of IPC, but the starting point will come from the IT Act. That's how it is layered. So the penalty, there is a data theft, there is a damage done to the computer, failure to protect data, or there's anything aspect happening in this, it is defined under the IT Act. And then it goes out to be read with the IPC. Now, because earlier you didn't have electronic forms of evidences, the Evidence Act was subsequently amended to recognize digital records. So part 2 talks about penalties and adjudication, where it talks about any damages that is done and what kind of penalty is applied and who is going to be an adjudicating officer. That's what it defines in part 2. Part 3 talks about authorities. So you have a cyber appellate authority constituted in every state. Typically, it would be in a secretariat. There will be an IAS officer who will be appointed to handle this. Chennai, Tamil Nadu also has. In Chennai, in secretariat, we have a cyber appellate. There's an adjudicating authority. Appellate tribunal needs to be constituted, still in process. So you have the qualification for a chairperson, member, and judicial member that's been defined here. Hierarchy, you have an adjudicating officer, you have an appeal to cyber appellate tribunal. Post that, you have an appeal in the High Court, and then you go to Supreme Court. So section 46 talks about an adjudicating officer, 48 to 59 appellate authority, and then the appeal. So this is how it is structured. Offenses. So while you're trying to deal with the security aspect, this aspect of part 3 defines the offense. So if there is a tampering with the computer source documents, it is an offense under section 65. The computer is hacked and there is a system data or a data is altered or deleted or destroyed, section 66 comes into picture. Publishing of obscene information, section 67 comes in picture. Unauthorized access to protected system, hacking into a network, jailbreaking into a software, or breaking open into a unauthorized access into a laptop or a system. All these are come under unauthorized access to protect the system, section 70. Breach of confidentiality and privacy, section 72. So breach of confidentiality, let me give a very simple example. You have an employee working in your company. He is bound by the employee's terms and condition. And one of the terms and conditions that you definitely have would be on confidentiality. The person is working as a pre-sales guy and he has access to all your customer database. He also has an access to your pricing. He also has an access to your solution framework. He decides to steal all this and hand it to a third party. In absence of an IT Act, you wouldn't have been able to prosecute him. This is where the breach of confidentiality comes in. So when you say breach of confidentiality under section 72, it will also be read with relevant portion of IPC, Indian Penal Code, theft, robbery, or stealing. Theft is what would be the closest one that will come to it. Now, if there are set of people who have jointly done this, then there is a conspiration. So the sections relevant to conspiracy comes into picture. Apart from that, there is also criminal breach of trust, because you trusted this employee, you have given this data to him, and he is supposed to be using it diligently without ensuring that it is safeguarded, but he decides to steal it. Believe me, I get cases from many IT companies where they come with so much of frustration saying that, hey, there is an email pilferage. I'm sending a quote to my customer, but my competitor is going there with the solution and with a competing rate. Frustrating situation. While you can technically plug the issue, how are you going to prosecute him? That's where we come into picture. Publishing false digital signature certificate, section 73. So this connects with your first part where we spoke about the digital signature. Here is the offense part. Breaching of confidentiality and privacy. This is very, very important because this is the most common thing that happens, your data getting lost. So on the left hand side it's what it talks about the act or the definitions. It's any person who in pursuance of any power conferred under the act, rules or regulation made under secured access to an electronic record, book, register, correspondence, information, document or other material without the consent of the person concerned, discloses such electronic record, book, register, correspondence, information, document or other material to any other person shall be punished with an imprisonment with a term which may extend to 2 years, with a fine which may extend to 1 lakh rupees. So this is how your legal definition is for a breach of privacy and the offense connected or punishment connected to it. The relevant sections are section 70, 72, 73. So unauthorized access to a protected system, breach of confidentiality and privacy, and publishing false digital signature and certificate. Agencies involved. So agencies are like different levels have been defined. You have a National Cyber Coordination Center, Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, CERTIN, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, CDAC, Data Security Council of India, DSCI, Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, which has Cybercrime Research and Development Unit, CCRDU, Cybercrime Investigation Cell, CCIC, Cyber Forensic Laboratory and Network Monitoring Center. These are all the agencies that are currently working on this particular area. So this is very critical because when you look at, you might feel that, hey, you're working on the technical environment and your clients are operating. but there is a whole gamut of agencies that are there behind to provide security and to secure the national interest from in terms of the cyber networking or the cyberspace that's connecting this entire country. Lot of information are flowing across, and under the IT Act, the government has been given the authority to actually do a surveillance, which I'll come in the later part. Arrest under IT Act. Patrika journalist Prabhat Singh arrested under Section 297 Indian Penal Code, read with Section 67 of IT Act. It relates to wrong publishing of the a report or making some remarks which is actually affecting the other person's reputation. The statement resulted in a lot of chaos and commotion, and as a result, this particular gentleman was arrested. Journalist Rahul Pandita tweeted a screenshot of the WhatsApp chat that resulted in all these issues. Just an example. So if we see that, if we think that WhatsApp is being used, and probably that may not be known to people, but certain things that are published in WhatsApp are also attracting punishment, because there is a need that the communication in the WhatsApp group is also restricted, it is regulated, and false messages are not being published. The other aspect is you also need to ensure that wrong information is not passing out, which incites violence into the country. These are some examples. Cyber defamation. I think all of you are reading much of the newsprints, and you see a lot of false allegations flowing here and there. What is the remedy for it? Here we are under IT Act. There is cyber defamation. It's already defined in it. The other aspect is it is read along with IPC. So while the defaming news is being published in a WhatsApp or a Twitter or a Facebook or an Instagram, it is being governed under IPC. So you have Section 499, which talks about what amounts to a defamation. IPC 500 talks about the term of the punishment, 2 years. 469 deals with the other aspects like forgery, cheating. So this is how the whole thing has been entwined. Your IPC and IT Act read together. So if somebody thinks I commit an offense under IT Act, I can just go scot-free. Sorry, no, you are not. Section 66A was an erstwhile section which was... Can somebody... Thank you. So Section 66A is an old provision in the Act which was struck down by the Supreme Court because it was actually breaching into the right of freedom of speech and expression. This was an issue, this speared up from one of the cases where two girls had just written something about a political party, and a FIR was filed against them, and they were arrested. A case was registered against them, so immediately a petition was filed in Supreme Court claiming that 66A was a draconian provision which actually was infringing into the right of freedom and speech of expression, and it was rightfully struck down. That is also there in the slide subsequently. So what was 66A? 66A was this particular aspect, as I have put it here. It talks about punishable offense of any person to send by means of computer resource or communication device any information grossly offensive or menacing in character, any information which he knows to be false but for the purpose of causing annoyance and inconvenience, and danger, obstruction, insult, injury, criminal intimidation, etc. So this provision was so open-ended that if you were to put any personal opinion or any comment about anybody on the Facebook or the Twitter, that person could file a case against you under Section 66A and you can have a FIR registered against you. So this became a very dangerous aspect and it could be misused as well. As a result, this was struck down. Like I explained a few minutes back, this was actually a very, very open-ended provision which was rightly removed. This is Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. This was the case which was a landmark judgment which actually helped in streamlining the IT Act. I'm not going to dwell on this, I'll just move on. The other areas where the offenses are connected are Section 67, which talks about publishing or transmitting obscene material in electronic form. Section 67A, like in that first instance, you have 3 years imprisonment. If it is done, subsequently 5 years. 67A, publishing or transmitting of sexually explicit acts in electronic form. I know there are a lot of videos that are floating around in WhatsApp, and you all are aware of it. But nobody is aware that there is Section 67A, and if a complaint goes, a person can be imprisoned or even fined. Section 67B, punishment for publishing and transmitting material depicting children in sexual explicit. These right now you have the government which is already monitoring the internet and checking to an extent that if there is any flow of information, they can track your IP address and knock at your door. Impact of IT Act on other provisions. So while you have the Information Technology Act, which is there governing all the aspects of the IT Act, corresponding changes were made in IPC, the Indian Evidence Act, the Banker's Book of Evidence, and Indian Copyright Act. And these are some of the changes that I'm putting right in before you, just for your information. And these are where the IPC is attracting. Sending threatening messages by email. You have a conflict, you have a difficulty, you have a problem with some other guy, and you ended up saying, if you're not going to pay me, I'm going to kill you. That is Section 503 IPC Part 2. So it's a criminal intimidation. Sending defamatory messages by email. These are the offenses under IPC. Forgery of electronic records. You can see the relevant section in IPC. Bogus websites, cyber frauds. Section 420 IPC. Email spoofing, 416-17. These are all the current amendments. Webjacking, 383. Criminal breach of trust, like I mentioned, fraud, 405, 406, 408, 409. Believe me, once you get into these aspects and you understand the gravity of the issue, your explanation to your clients in terms of telling why this particular aspect is very critical becomes much more, the clients will appreciate where we are coming from. Destruction of electronic evidence, 204-477. Somebody used an eliminator in your organization and swiped out the entire laptop. This is the provision. He's already done something wrong and he's tried to clean the track. False electronic evidence. You have somebody has doctored an email and has pushed it, or he has fabricated an email ID which is similar to that, and he's tried to do something. 193. Online sale of drugs, NDPS Act. Online sale of Arms Act. So these are the impacts on IPC. Ruby, just let me know if I'm overshooting on the time so I can trim it accordingly. New section 29A was brought in, wherein the definition of electronic record was brought in, so that it goes in sync with the IT Act. New subsection 3 was inserted in section 4 of IPC, which relates to the acts which are done beyond India. This is something which I will dwell upon, is what happens if your system gets hacked and you have traced the IP to some guy sitting in Canada, or he's sitting in say London. What are your remedies available? So typically your attack is never going to be from inshore. It could be outsourced. It could be done from offshore. Somebody sitting elsewhere is hacked into your system and is trying to take out data. How will you prosecute such a person? That's something which I will dwell upon in the subsequent slides. So these are some amendments which I just thought I will put it so that you get a flavor of what's happening. So 118, 119, it deals with the concealment of design or commitment offense punishable for death or imprisonment. Voluntarily conceals by any act or omission or by use of encryption or any other information hiding tool the existence of a design were inserted before the words to be commit such offense or make any representation which he knows to be false or. So these are amendments done in IPC to bring in the flavor of the electronic offense. Section 64 of IPC talks about the digital signature and the offenses related to it. Electronic record was included under IPC in different sections. Just a input. So earlier we had restricted only to documents, books, paper. Now you have electronic records brought into it. Section 466 of IPC, which deals with forgery of court records, also has amendment to electronic form. I would like to just mention one critical illustration here. The famous case of Anil Ambani, who had to pay money to Ericsson. And this matter was in Supreme Court, and the order of the court was to call for Anil Ambani to be present before the Honorable Supreme Court. For some reason, the order was changed and need not be present before Supreme Court was the order that came out in the fine print. So they were wondering why Anil Ambani was not present, and they produced this particular order. And they found out that there was a tampering of the court record, where just a change of word actually changed the entire meaning. Section 354D was inserted. Offense of cyber stalking has been brought in. So you are on Twitter, you pass some message on the Twitter, and there are a host of people who are stalking and they are trolling and they are continuously passing messages. You go to Facebook, you find the same set of people coming and stalking and seeing what you are doing and commenting repeatedly. That's an offense for which 354 has been amended.
Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Srinath. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So can we
tell me.
Yeah, can we just have another 5 minutes for the session?
Yeah, I got it. So I will just rush down to the aspect of extraterritorial issues. So where you have your offenses happening from external from offshore, you have provisions under the relevant act to ensure that an action can be taken against a perpetrator who are outsourced, who are sitting outside of this country. City Union Bank, Cosmo Bank are the two critical examples. So Section 69 of Information Technology Act deals with situation where there is a threat to sovereignty. Your system can be taken up into surveillance. Your WhatsApp can be hacked, or it can be put under surveillance. You have the Right to Privacy Act, which is one of the critical things which has come under the Supreme Court's observation. Does this amount to breach of Right to Privacy Act? Yes, if it is done by individuals who are trying to snoop into your system and find details about you. No, if it affects the sovereignty of the country. So these are some examples. There's a famous Aadhaar case which is still pending in the Supreme Court, where they want to link Aadhaar with Facebook and your WhatsApp. So that is under consideration. We are expecting the order post-lockdown probably. These are other aspects of unlawful interceptions. Afzal Guru's case is very critical. Parliament attack. What effect did Afzal Guru's case have in the IPC or Information Technology Act? Electronic records became admissible as an evidence, as a secondary evidence in the court of law. That's a very critical change that brought in. 63 and 65 came into Indian Evidence Act, admissibility of electronic evidence. Interpretation of Section 65B reinstated, providing secondary evidence, printouts taken from mechanical processes and certified by responsible officers. So 65B was brought in, wherein you can certify the electronic evidence. Other aspects, I'll just wind out. These are nature of offenses. If it is 7 years or more, and if it's a punishment is that, it's called a cognizable offense, non-bailable. If it is 3 years and below, non-bailable, it is heard, but it's a cognizable offense. It's heard by magistrate first class. If a crime is punishable under less than 3 years and it is a non-cognizable, it is tried by any magistrate. So with the degree of your penalty or imprisonment, the offense is changed. So you have cognizable offense, 7 years, more than 7 years, cognizable non-bailable, 3 years and upwards, and it is cognizable and non-bailable, it is magistrate who tries it. If it is less than 3 years and non-cognizable, it is bailable offense, which is tried by any magistrate. So essentially, these are the other aspects that are coming into technology: Bitcoin, blockchain, artificial intelligence. and all these needs to be regulated under the legal under the law. So these are the next things that we will come into picture, and these are certain things that old issues that surfaced which caused a lot of issues. Blue whale issue, people committing suicide, Momo's challenge, people were arrested who were trying to do it, journalists were arrested, where one of the WhatsApp group admin who was running this particular WhatsApp pushing fake news was arrested. So this is my conclusion. Any questions, please let me know.
We will have a question and answer round at the end. Yeah. So we'll move to the next session. So thank you so much, sir, for giving us brief idea on cyber crimes and different cyber attacks, and also giving us a detailed understanding on the Information Technology Act.
Most welcome, and it's my pleasure because the time is so less. I just had to rush on certain aspects. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
So next, I would like to call upon Mr. Paul and Mr. Vince, who will be jointly doing the next part of the session. So first, I would like to introduce Mr. Somin. So Mr. Somin has over 18 years of experience and extensive experience in delivering and managing cybersecurity operations center. He is the founder and managing director of iCyberdefense. Now, speaking about Mr. Vince, so Mr. Vince has over 17 years of experience in cybersecurity and information protection in both the public and private sector, and has been granted the UK's highest level of security clearance. So I would like to handle the session to both of them.
Thanks, Ruby, and thanks everyone for attending this session, and thanks to Sri to give excellent insight into regulatory situation in India. Firstly, Ruby, how long do I have? How many minutes do I have to go through the slides before I hand it over to Vince?
You can take 20 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so I think you all of you have, I think, good understanding of law enforcement and various acts we have. And so I think we should step back and think one key question ourselves, that we have law enforcement trying to do everything we can from the government side. And we have, we as a business spend a lot of money to buy firewalls, routers, switches, all the security products we find to protect our business. Now, can you please go on mute? Thank you. So we have, in one hand, we have law enforcement. In the other hand, we have this cybersecurity controls, and which is on the ground in your data center, offices, everywhere. So still, we can see the significant security breaches, and cyber criminals are still able to operate. And that is the question we should ask ourselves, that how this is happening. When you have spent so much money, you have law enforcement, and even police is not able to find, as Sri rightly stated, the reported incident is really low. Non-reported, then there are lots of incidents not reported, and even businesses even do not have visibility. The criminals have access to their system. So I would like to talk about that for part of these 6 or 7 slides I have. So if we can go to the next slide, Ruby. So this is, we'll talk about the dark web. What is dark web? And in last 10-15 years, as more businesses have transitioned to cloud, and part of the cloud transition and internet evolution of internet, if you have observed that 90 to 95% of our online systems are actually end-to-end encrypted, that means it's running on HTTPS or SSL. It's encrypted traffic. No one can see what's going on. Now, and there are various drivers for it. PCI DSS, like online e-commerce regulation, that has forced to move everything on HTTPS traffic or encrypted traffic. Now, using that technology evolution, what did happen in last few years, cyber criminals are actually using that as a backdoor to maintain their criminal activity. So this is the topic I would like to talk about. Now, when you go to when you surf your website, when you Google search, Microsoft Bing, or any website you search, that's actually surface web. That's the 4% of the overall internet traffic. There are 90% traffic, which is your internal communication, like corporate traffic. You can look intranet, your internal documentations, and that's your data center, wherever you store your servers, and that's the data. But there is a dark web behind the scene which is 6% of the data, which is a large section. I'll go to the few slides later on. That what is dark web? So dark web is not indexed like Google. When you search in Google, you can find a search. If you search, go to Google and find anything on the search, you get indexed here. So the database in dark web is not indexed. That means any search engine, which is Google, Facebook, or Microsoft, they cannot search dark web directly unless you know exactly what you want to search. That means it's unless you have the exact length of the URL of the page. So that's the dark web. Now, who uses dark web in the past? Illegal information, drug trafficker in various countries, encrypted site like pirated DVDs, videos. In 10 years ago, they all used to use dark web. But in few years, the transition has happened. Cyber criminals are using that. Ruby, can you please go to the next slide, please? So it's very sensitive, and as it stated, it's not illegal to browse dark web. It's unless you do an offense, which goes back to the Sri's point. If you make an offense, and then it is law enforcement can catch you. So you can browse to dark web, and you can find it's the best place for cyber criminals, because it used to be used for drugs, recreational drugs, and of course pirated movies and various pirated softwares. And you can see the list of things what are listed there. Now, to browse dark web, you cannot use standard browser, which is like Microsoft Internet Explorer, Firefox, or even Google Chrome's. You need to have a different browser like Onion browser. So that Onion browser is the browser to use to browse to dark web to find the information from there. Now, along with the, so that's the normal users, but criminals, of course, don't use, cyber criminals don't use browser. They will use point-to-point network or P2P network to transfer data, exchange information, and know about your personal information, and of course the organizational information. So it's a big list of activities take place behind the scene, which none of you have visibility to. And it's a significant amount of transactions, information. So all the Bitcoin transactions, everything which Sri talked about, all the criminal activities do happen. They actually happen through dark web. Now, why can't we find that? Because as we said, this doesn't come into standard Google search or indexed internet-based surface web. Because it's happening behind the scene. Law enforcement do not have time and resources to find a non-indexed database of information which is distributed across the globe to find and which is some of the cases cross boundary. Maybe information of a criminal, one of the system in America, one of the system in UK, one of the system in India or somewhere else. So it's a cross international boundary and distributed, non-indexed. It is difficult for law enforcement to find that information from everywhere and coordinate internationally. But cyber criminals are using that to still maintain their criminal activity. And on top of that, because the channel is encrypted, end-to-end encryption, and national surveillance, and of course national surveillance do happen in various countries, and which Sri did talk about slightly on that. When national surveillance happen, even is because of end-to-end encryption, there's no encryption key to decrypt the data and can look into this, what's going on. And we will go to a few slides, which Vince will talk about that, what information we can find in dark web. Ruby, let's go to the next slide. So using this new IT landscape where you have end-to-end encryption, you have cloud, you have everything, end user to applications are hosted, can be hosted anywhere in the world, because it's not because of in the cloud world we cannot say that it's hosted in India, it's hosted in specific country. It can be anywhere based on Microsoft, on Azure, AWS. Most cases they are the largest provider, and they are reference architecture. Now, cyber criminals are using that as an opportunity to use dark web to exchange hacking tools. They're sharing knowledges so that, and they have very close community that they share knowledges with each other, ensure and they have actually, they have started recruiting openly using dark web, that if you are a really good hacker, you can be hired by an unknown person somewhere and you'll be paid through Bitcoin, and everything in dark web. And one of the most transactional information is any personal information, leak credential, everything you see and read on the newspapers, they're actually sold in dark web, most cases. There was some research done in King's College of London a few years ago, and they found 57% of illicit materials like credit card numbers, hacked accounts, they are all dark web. As I said, that because it's not indexed data as you observe in Google search and Microsoft search, and where those indexing is done by Google and Microsoft on behalf of Surface Wave, it is very difficult to search anything in dark web with keeping that limited resourcing law enforcement have. If the law enforcement do not have limited resourcing to search dark web and hunt down those criminals, unless there's an incident reported or major incident reported, it is of course very difficult for organizations, enterprises who do not have lots of resources within their SOC, or may have SOC or may not have SOCs, and you all are resource constrained to hunt this significantly large dark web to find who is actually running these operations for against our organizations. Now, over the period since 2016, because of IT evolution and of course cloud evolution, there's a significant shift, and 20% increase has happened through dark web listing, which are against enterprises. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you, Ruby. There are 12 categories which kind of listed out that relevant to the enterprise risk. We talked about dark web is used for wider criminal activity, which is selling weapons, selling terrorism activities, and of course drug activities. But and that's significant list. But we want to focus on what is relevant to IT and enterprise risk. And if you observe, the list is here, which is aligned with Sri's previous presentation, that those are the incidents we are observing, that DDoS attack, and we are seeing infection, malware. We can see the keyloggers, exploits, phishing attack, credential theft, refund, customer theft. Now you can all ask yourself that if you have a data center, you may have a DDoS protection from Arba, you may have a firewalls, and to protect yourself, then why still you are seeing significant activities happening within your organization? And these are the areas you are all technical, so I would know that at a headline news you all know that what is DDoS, what is espionage, and credential theft, all these things happening. Let's go to the next slide, Ruby, please. So what are the things? What are the enterprise risk from dark web? Of course, there's a national level risk. Criminals are doing it, and government are trying to catch those criminals wherever the government property and government assets are being compromised. But if we look at from enterprise and business standpoint, what are the key risk category? So one key option of the objective is these criminals are trying to devaluate your enterprise. That means if we can see on a headline news, one of the top bank have lost 1 million customer data, and it's published somewhere. The somewhere is nothing but dark web, and that's the criminal damage. Now criminals may have made some money or may not have made some money using Bitcoin, depending on how they have negotiated with the bank, but there's a significant reputational damage for the organization. Is much more its impact is high in case the organization is listed in stock market, and there is a risk of devaluating the organization. Secondly is disruption to the enterprise. That means sorry if you someone thank you, sorry Ruby, let's stay on the same. Yeah, thank you. Secondly, that there's a disrupting the enterprise. What does it mean? So if the headline news about your organization by whichever means, using dark web and all these criminal activities, which earlier Sri mentioned, you are already resource constrained. You have limited resources, limited budget. So you would be busy to fix that problem because an incident has happened. You are kind of retrospectively trying to fix it just to ensure you have compliant with the law, and of course your customers are happy. And that disruption is used as an opportunity by cyber criminals to launch the real attack. And they could launch a DDoS attacks or malware or even a ransomware attack because you are really busy into something. So your focus has shifted, and that is used as a strategy to get into your environment and create a longer term attacks in the future. And also there's a third bullet point is defrauding enterprise. If you have intellectual property, or you have customer whose intellectual property is actually stored because you're doing some development work in your environment, so that may lead to financial loss. So this is overall objective of these criminals. Now, why do you need to what is threat intelligence? That means you need to be ahead of the game. That means if someone is plotting a game and thinking about your organization or trying to do something in the future, you need to know about those people. Not be the people, maybe their objective, what they're trying to do. And this is where the threat intelligence comes in. And I'll just quickly run through what is the threat intelligence is all about. This threat intelligence gives you the view and access to the dark web in a structured manner. That means we can search dark web for XYZ organization, and based on your threat profile, we can assess that and search dark web using a service called Dark Intelligence. It's a subscription-based service, and it can assess against any external threat or even internal threat. It's not in your data center, it's sitting on the cloud, but it has access to the dark web database which is the international database. It's not specific to country. Also, it helps organizations to automate some of the proprietary data. Let's say if you're really worried about your intellectual property data, your company brands, we can search dark web. Is any criminal is searching for data or selling your information about your name or about your IP addresses, any details you want to search is specific to business, because every businesses are different. It also helps to do forensic investigation if there's a breach, as some of the breaches you have seen, which Sri mentioned. If there's a breach and you want to run a separate private investigation, yes, you can do that through this tool. You can use that service to search dark web. These are the IP addresses have been breached. These are the accounts have been compromised. Have they been sold to any terrorist organization? Have they been sold to your competitors to take advantage of the business? Let's go to the next slide, Ruby, please. Now, what we do, we do 24/7 SOC team, because it's a specialist service, a very specialist technical and activity, where we look after, we build a 24/7 SOC, and which Deeptesh and can talk about later on if we have time, and that looks at your specific business intelligence, business and search. Use a threat intelligence and business intelligence model within the dark intelligence tool, and hunt those cyber criminals. Not the names, because names are all ambiguous there, but the activities they are doing, and come back to you that this is what is happening about you. Be prepared, and we'll show you some use cases shortly through Vince. And these SOC teams are based in US, UK, Australia. It's an international team, and so that we have international expertise, so that we have understanding of how dark web operates. We closely work with National Cybersecurity Center. We have partnership there with them, because they have access to governments. They have governments access to dark web from Five Eyes Nation. And if you're aware of Five Eyes Nation, which is US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, these Five Eyes nations, they post World War II, they build a national national surveillance across the world, and India have partnership with that, Indian government as well. So we do but this is a private partnership with that National Cybersecurity Center. We through membership, we also get data, and that feeds back to the SOC. And we have a reporting service. We give the reporting, so we get to know if an attack is happening, or potential attacks coming through. At least we get the visibility of the threat beforehand, so you know that what threat potential is coming next few years. Next slide, Ruby. I think this is Vince. I think, sorry, that's it from me. Vince, I will hand it over to Vince Warrington. He's the product manager and head of dark intelligence product and services based in UK. And we work together to provide the service. Vince is take over now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Suman, and hello everybody. It's great to be talking to you from here in the UK. And I'll just cover what kind of some of the stuff that Suman's already talked about. Essentially, dark intelligence is a tool that's being developed to essentially shine that light onto the dark web. So it was developed initially to assist law enforcement and intelligence agencies to be able to find out what's happening on the dark web. So it does some things that you may have heard about that other dark web companies do, but it has some very, very unique properties. And it's fair to say, I think, that currently dark intelligence is probably at least 3 to 5 years ahead of any other dark web company at the moment with some of this technology. So one of the interesting things to talk about as a genuine attack that has happened that we know quite a lot about. You might remember that a couple of years ago, the big American company Equifax had a massive hack, and there were tens of millions of personal details stolen from the company. Basically, it was a credit ratings company, so it had lots and lots of personal data on individuals all across the US and Europe and Australia and places like that. Now, what happened for that attack was what we know was a Chinese government-backed group connected to a very old server in their network, and through a darknet connection, essentially a P2P connection into their server. And their team, the Equifax security team, didn't spot it. And once they'd got that connection, the attackers sat there and waited. And they waited for a good 2 weeks to find out whether they'd been discovered or not. And when they were confident they hadn't been discovered, they started stealing data. Now, that attack, from when they first gained access to when Equifax discovered it, or by accident, they really discovered it by chance, that was 76 days from start to finish. So for a good portion, 50 days almost, data was being stolen from that company. It was tens of millions of personal data. Now, the interesting thing about that attack is normally when you talk about cyber criminal gangs, they might steal that data and then very quickly they'll publish it on the dark web, in the dark web marketplaces, so they can make money out of that data that they've stolen. Now, with this attack, that data has never, ever been released onto the dark web or anywhere else. So it went somewhere into the Chinese government and nobody's seen it. And that causes a problem, because if you have a traditional company to check for your data on the dark web, that data would never have appeared. So if Equifax hadn't spotted it by accident, that attack could still be going on today, 2 years later, and nobody would know about it. So that creates a big problem. And so part of what this solution does is takes that problem away. So once you're signed up to the subscription service, and depending on what level you come in at, essentially the teams in the SOC start monitoring straight away for your for your data if it does get published on the dark web. So we can look for, server names, email addresses, usernames and passwords, all of that good stuff we can find on the dark web. But also we can monitor traffic, specifically traffic using the darknet to connect your networks. Now, how this works, it's completely, I think somebody's okay. So how this works is it's completely independent of your IT solution. So what we do is we monitor the perimeter of your network, so the network firewall is the perimeter. What we do is we identify traffic coming out of the darknet and connecting to your firewalls. So some of that will be a user who uses the Tor browser to just browse your website. Some of that will be things such as, and in the example we've seen here on the screen, this was actually a real attack going on. this was connections to a company, it was connections to their email servers, it was people infiltrating their email servers from the darknet. And so that's really, really good information. If you're an IT security team or an IT department, you really want to know that that's happening. So on the one hand, you could be blind to it, and 76 days later you find it out. With dark intelligence, we could tell you in as little as 15 minutes that a connection from the dark web has basically tried to get into your network. And that's really useful information for you if you're an IT security team. That means you can investigate it very quickly. You can use the information we provide to investigate, and it may be that it is just a it's a potential client, for example, just looking at your website using the Tor browser, or it could be that somewhere in your team they're doing a penetration test and they're trying it through the darknet, and we can sort that out. Most of the time, though, you'll want to know and react very quickly to it. So that's why it's really useful. Not only does it identify traffic coming out of the darknet and hitting your firewalls, it will also detect any traffic coming out of your firewalls and attempting to gain access to the darknet. And that's equally as important, because if you see traffic coming in, could be harmless, but it could be potential attackers. Traffic coming out of your network into the darknet is always a cause of the concern, unless you've got some authorized users who are authorized to use the Tor browser, for example. Normally, traffic coming out of your network into the darknet is very bad news. It's either something like rogue employees who are stealing data. It could be that you've got a botnet infection inside your network and it's trying to communicate with a command and control server sitting outside on the darknet. So it's useful information, and it just gives your security teams, and again, we'll alert that within 15 minutes, and it just gives your security teams and your IT teams the chance to get on top of any potential problem before data gets stolen or gets removed out of your business. So essentially, what happens is you take the service, it feeds into a SOC, and the SOC guys can then, if you have your own SOC as it is, we can then get that data in. So can you just go back one slide a little? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Get some noise in.
Request everyone to please put on mute.
Okay, yeah, and so the interesting thing is about the service is it's fully as a service. There's nothing for your clients to install. We don't need to install agents onto endpoints. We don't need to install servers into a data center. It's completely managed by us. And the equally good thing is no one on the dark web, so none of these kind of hackers or criminals that are looking at your networks, they will not be aware that we're monitoring them. So that gives you, the advantage over them, because they think that they're not been spotted. We've spotted them. We can monitor what they're up to, and you can block every attempt that they're trying to get into your network. And equally, as we've had earlier on in the presentation, the risks of illegal material on your networks. We emphasize to people there is no need for the company that we're monitoring to connect to the darknet at all. So there is zero risk of you accidentally accessing illegal materials by accessing the dark web. You don't need to do that at all. We monitor it completely remotely. So we can move on to the next slide now, if that's okay. And what I'm going to talk through here is some use cases that we found the service has been useful for. And so we have, I'll just run down these. So, for example, we can get, if you have a small fintech is very big in the UK at the moment. The UK's got the world's leading open banking ecosystem. And so there's lots of fintechs in the UK that we're looking at helping to protect. And so if you're a fintech or a high-tech company or anything like that, you might not have the capabilities of the larger firms to deal with this kind of attack. But the good news about that is, you can still access this service, and you're still getting the same top quality service of darknet monitoring as you would, at a leading bank. It's the same level of service. So even if you've got small clients, they can still benefit from the same level of service. We've also seen, for example, if you've got a charity, for example, that works with people in a police state or in states where that charity might become vulnerable to the local authorities. Again, we could monitor those for any potential traffic coming in, and that then gives those people who work with those vulnerable people a chance to say, we think that the authorities are now looking at us. We need to make sure that our the people we work with are secure, and they're not getting their data exposed or leaked to the authorities. We also have, for example, if you're a legal firm, you may have a case involving a high-profile public figure or a very kind of newsworthy case that tends to attract attention from people on the darknet for two reasons. And the first is, it could be that the opposite side in the legal dispute is trying to find out what one side knows. So they might use these techniques and tactics of the dark web to infiltrate and find out what's happening. Or it could be journalists or activists or anybody like that who's interested in such a case will be trying to get hold of this data. So again, this is an ability to kind of prevent those attacks from happening by alerting very early on. And because it was designed with law enforcement in mind at the start, it can then be used to drive down towards prosecution for the attackers. It also works with things like defense. So if you're a supplier into the defense chain, and that could be for anything. I mean, we know of a firm that essentially makes socks, as in the things you put on your feet, for the UK military, that had a potential infiltration, because the hostile nation states will look for any possible angle to get into these big companies. And it's the same with banks as well. It's very difficult nowadays to attack large banks. So one way of doing it is to find the lower in the food chain suppliers who are more vulnerable. So you may well have heard years ago of an attack on the Bank of Bangladesh.
Sorry to interrupt, Vince. As we are running out of time, can we wind up?
I'll be very quick. Yeah. So what we have is, for example, a large the Bank of Bangladesh attack, for example, wasn't actually an attack on the Bank of Bangladesh. It was an attack on a bank in New York via the Bank of Bangladesh. So that's why these things are important. If you're an attacker and you want to attack a very large target, it's often easier to go into the supply chain and get access that way than it is to attack it directly. And the same applies for lots of other. Healthcare at the minute is massively under attack because of the COVID situation. So we're seeing lots of attacks from the darknet against healthcare firms and hospitals and the like. People trying to monetize the virus that's affecting the world. And we also get things such as, if you're a large media company, for example, you might be releasing a new movie. It's going to earn the company hundreds of millions of dollars. But nowadays, you need to parcel out some of the work of completing that movie to smaller companies. And so, for example, if you sent the movie to a company to finish off some of the soundtrack work, what you don't want then is an employee within that company leaking that movie out onto the dark web before it's been completed. So again, somebody like a global media business could use the service to monitor the supply chain to be able to spot when there's potential problems happening and then stop them before they actually become a serious problem. So we'll just skip through the next kind of 3 slides really quickly. So this is very quick. ICICI Bank got hit. This is some of the traffic and some of the information that we found on the dark web for them, and how often they were being hit and what ports were being hit. And if we look at the next slide, again, this just pulls out some of the email addresses of employees that we could find, and some of the paste bin dumps that we could find. So we monitor paste bins as well. And then on the final slide we have, this is just an example of the level of depth we can go into. So this was information that ICICI was being talked about on a Russian hacking forum called Portship. And so we could infiltrate that. We could see what was happening. We could then advise and say to a company and say, this is happening right now. Hackers are talking about infiltrating your company right now. So it's a good idea to be prepared for it. And I think that might be the last slide. So I would just like to say thanks for listening, you all. And I think we're taking questions at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. Thanks. It's very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us idea on dark web, threat intelligence, and dark intelligence. Now, at last, I would like to call upon the last speaker for the session. So I would like to call upon Mr. Deeptesh Shah. So Deeptesh Shah is currently head of practice at Ensure Services Reddington Group. He has 15 plus years of experience in handling network and security consulting and professional services. So please.
Thanks, Ruby. And I would like to thank all the speakers for this wonderful session today. So definitely business risk intelligence and legal compliance, I believe, are one of the most important aspects of information security governance. And we at Ensure Services work with customers in helping them create the complete cybersecurity strategy. So I don't have any presentation today because the time is very less, and already some of our speakers and panelists have already spoken the risk intelligence and the legal compliance and the IT Act part of it. So, but I would like to drive an important point today. So, as we all know that the entire country is working from home and accessing companies' information and data from their personal devices. So this is the time we need to be more careful in terms of securing our data and assets. So there are many risks which lies here. So some of them, like we have using insecure Wi-Fi network, using personal devices that may be poorly protected. Then there are scams and malicious emails targeting employees. And finally, the lack of training or understanding of best practices when it comes to information security. So what we have done here is our SOC team has launched a free self-assessment assessment, which will help you to identify the gaps and obviously take a necessary measure in terms of protecting mid-sized organizations like you from cyber crimes. So what it will do, it will effectively create a working document for your business, and you can record the measurement which you have taken during this self-assessment. So what is this assessment comprises of? So there are four segments of this assessment. The first one is end user device security, which includes both laptop and desktop. Then we have end user device security, which is the mobile devices, which will also include your BYOD policies. And then we have network security. And finally, the most important, how the sensitive data leakage. Now, when you take this assessment, it will not give you any form of security certification for your organization. But what it will do is it will help you to improve your capability as an organization and significantly reduce the chances of you becoming a victim of cybercrime. So I think this assessment is very simple, but it has a very detailed modules which cover all these four aspects. So I would ask some of you who have joined this session. I can see from the participant list there are around 40 or 50 plus 40 plus customers. So you can always take this assessment, and our team will be happy to guide you. Okay, so you can contact Mr. Balaji, okay, who is there from our side, and you also have Miss Ruby, okay, from TNCL group. So you can connect either of them, and you can take this assessment services. So with this, I would like to thank all of you, okay, for joining this session. And I hope that whatever the message Mr. SRINATH, Mr. Somen, and Vince tried to drive. And at last, I also give you a very important point in terms of when you do a work from home, and as an organization, there are a lot of things you need to take care. So when you take this self-assessment, this will definitely help you, okay, to address the overall system of ecosystem of your working remotely. So Ruby, I think we can move into the Q&A session, and there are a few questions I see, okay, in the chat box. So I think if anyone has any question, please do ask. You can also put
Yeah,
it in the chat.
I request all the participants, if they have any question, you can just post it in the chat, or you can just say it, unmute, and you can just ask the question to the speakers.
So one question, Ruby, I see.
Yeah, I see one question here.
Yeah.
It is a question. The question is: can a company sue a case on IT manager for negligence due to its data loss?
So this I think is directed to
This is
Srinath.
Srinath.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, you can initiate a suit, but the question is whether the IT manager is an employee or a third party. That's the first question. The second aspect is when you say data loss, the first thing that you need to do is an assess on what you claim as data loss and how the data has been lost. So after doing that assessment only, you can come to a conclusion whether you want to file a case against the IT manager or someone else.
Okay. So, any other question?
Yeah, one more question I can see. Mr. Muhammad Rizaz has asked from when we can learn more about dark web. So I think Somin, it is directed to you.
You can do Google search and with the get basic information about dark web, what it operates. Yeah, Google provides. Yeah, sorry, if you, I can't. Can you? Can the individual? Okay, yeah. You can go to Google search and Microsoft. You can go to Google search and Microsoft Bing to get more information, but you will not be able to have access to the dark web. You will not know what is inside there. You can learn what is dark web, pretty much just slides and presentation I have presented. You can find those information on Google search. Hopefully that helps understand, Muhammad.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
Durai here.
Yeah, tell me.
See, one of the recently one of our customer got infected because of these people taken data from the customer side. Okay, under that claiming crores of amount for giving the data back. So how it will be mitigated? See, is it anything? Everything will be transferred through all are will be transferred through digital only, the payment and all. Even I heard that there is a payment also made, then only he is able to get the data. So is it not possible to capture because all are digital made, is it not possible to capture that guy and make it be legal law?
Maybe Sri can take that because
Yeah, you can, but you have to report this particular offense that has happened. You say that data was stolen from your system, and then you have been there's an extortion. Clearly, this is an extortion, and you have to register a complaint first. But before that, you need to do an analysis on when you are getting calls or emails asking for this extortion. You need to keep all those evidences ready, and you can definitely file a complaint with the cybercrime division. If you are located in Chennai, you can do it at here, or if you are located elsewhere, you need to go to the concerned department. If you are in Bangalore, Bangalore also has a very good cybercrime department. You need to lodge a complaint and then initiate the investigation. But please bear in mind, every phone call that is coming to you or every communication that is coming to you, please preserve that as an evidence.
I would also like to add a point here, taking what Srinath ji said, Mr. Durai. Okay, so analysis is very important aspect here. So when there is a call which has been there, how we ascertain that okay, there is a compromise or a breach which has happened. So that is where the SOC capability, the forensic analysis, and also to the intelligence part of it comes, where we can see that if your data is really compromised, then is that data available in the market for sale, or that database, or the kind of nature of data we are talking about. So that is very important. So we need to see internally as well as externally that and create a complete analysis. And then I definitely we also record this call like Mr. Srinath said, and then together we create evidence, and then we can go to customers. So this is something where the SOC capability comes into, and the specialist team can help you in drafting and creating the analysis, and together then you can file a report to your nearest cybercrime department.
So rightly pointed out by Mr. Diptesh, the first thing that we need is a report of analysis, and that's where once that part is over, then I come into picture on two stages. Once there is an incident that has happened, you'll first need to do an assessment of what has gone wrong. Once you know somewhere something there is some suspicion, then you come to a lawyer and then we draft the complaint in the proper form and take it to the concerned department. And then the work starts with me and say with Mr. Diptesh, both work together so that we are able to project all those evidences before the concerned officer. So your stages are at multiple levels. You first file it before the police station or the cybercrime department. Post that, once you initiate the prosecution, you have to convince the court as well to take an action. So one of the cases that I will like to just give an illustration is a case of data theft where an ex-employee decided to steal the data and siphon it off to a competitor, then go and join the competitor along with the six other folks. That person, when the laptop was analyzed and scrutinized, there were certain traces of mail that had gone out from the Outlook. Not only that, when further analysis was done, it found a trace in the Gmail as well, because it was a Gmail server enterprise solution that we were using. So while the Outlook was being used as a front end to transfer the mails, the main aspect was an enterprise solution from Google. So we had to move through the US codes and get the dump of data and find the header information and tally those mails. Of three mails, we spotted one mail, gave all the evidence. As a result, that person was arrested, he was put behind bars, and post many of the aspects took place. So the essential thing is, once an incident has happened, immediately you have to secure your perimeter. You need to analyze what is going wrong, where that's where your analysis part starts. Identification of evidence, that's where we come into the picture and tell you what evidence we need, and that needs to be secured first for it to be preserved and then put before the concerned that police officer or cybercrime and the courts at relevant point. Bear in mind, the laptops and all the hard disks will also have to be sent to the government forensic labs. So before that, you need to take an image. So lot many things happen here. You have an entire arena of cyber forensic happening here once an incident is reported.
Okay. So I have a very interesting question here from Muhammad Izaz, and he says that someone tries to access this web, government will start tracking you. Okay, and can we use it for educational purpose? So I believe definitely we cannot use it for educational purpose, but I could ask Suman to further add any points there.
You got to dark web. I can see some of the questions.
Yes.
Yeah. You can install Tor browser, as I said. I was trying, probably because of noise. You can Google search and learn about dark webs. Now, when I say dark web, it's a database of decentralized database, decentralized architecture. Servers may be hosted in various countries, as like Bitcoin architecture. Bitcoin or is not or blockchain architecture. So they are distributed around the world, maybe Russia, China, US, UK, wherever they are. Now, yes, you can go and learn about dark web, how to access dark web, and their methodologies there. You can install like Internet Explorer or Firefox. You can install Tor browser and access. The biggest challenge you will get that what is the URL you're going to type. So as you for normal browsing, the normal web browsing, you go to ICICIbank.com or axisbank.com, .com and things like that. Dark webs are not .com, .in, .co.uk or .us. They are .onion. the .onion site. Now you cannot find a list of .onion site telling you on the internet that xyz.onion is selling drugs, xyz .onion selling weapons, xyz.onions giving you information about this. The index is not available. You may be able to find some information. Now when you are researching this and trying to learn things, you may unintentionally or accidentally you may go into a drug site or drug trafficking site or weapon site or terrorist site accidentally, and law enforcement in India may be keeping an eye, and that's the risk you need to understand. You can do it, yes, you can spend hours and hours searching this. When you use dark intelligence as a tool, we do have approval from government, back in government, that yes, we are allowed to do that. And then we also have technical skills that we do not access those sites which are not approved by the government. So there's a risk manually touching it.
Okay, we have one more question. So is there any standard checklist or guidelines for organizations who are currently working from home? Policies which can be implemented as a best practice?
Okay, Singhal, we have created the self-assessment which we have created. So there are a standard checklist and guidelines which are there, referred as the best practices, which I already discussed in all the 4 categories. So if you can take those, so definitely definitely it will help you to have a better control in place and better compliance is in place when it comes to remote support and working from home. So I would definitely, if you are further interested, you can just connect with the team, okay, and get those details, and then we can guide you to do a complete the self-assessment part of it. Thank you.
Any other question? Okay. So I think that's all we have. So I would like to first of all